beautiful sight. I mean, you know, it was very cold in here yesterday. And I said to myself, I'm not going to worry about it because tomorrow my heart is going to be filled with warmth and pride. And sure enough, that's what it's filled with now. Good afternoon, comrades and siblings, friends, and let me extend a warm, revolutionary welcome to everybody to our 32nd National Convention. And I want to extend an especially warm welcome to the delegates from our fraternal parties from around the world. We are so very excited that you are able to join us. They're sitting right down there in the middle. Give them a rousing, I can't hear you. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Comrades, we are so happy to be back home today in the great working class town of Chicago, Chi-Town, the city that gave us May Day. Chi-Town, the city that gave birth to our party, the Daily Worker, and now the People's World. And this year, as the comrades have already pointed out, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of our working class press. Happy birthday. Happy, happy birthday. What a great tradition of struggle. And today, Chicago, you are keeping that tradition alive. Congratulations on winning community control of the police. That's a big thing. Is Ted here today? Ted, congratulations, and congratulate the National Alliance and all of the organizations that helped make that happen. It was a huge development in our country. Y'all keep doing it. Congratulations on the election of Mayor Brandon Johnson. The people of Chicago are proving once and again that the people, united, can fight back and win. And today we have come to Chicago ready to fight back and win. The battle lines are clear and the stakes could not be higher. We are fighting a fascist danger at home and a genocidal war against Gaza abroad. And to defeat the danger at home, we have got to defeat the war abroad. Let us make it plain. Biden's Israel policy must be defeated today so that we can defeat Trump and MAGA tomorrow. Military aid to Israel must be cut. The Netanyahu regime must be isolated. Palestine must be free and have an independent state. The support for Israel's apartheid policies made in the corporate suites of this country must be defeated by mass movements in the streets. And that is exactly what has been happening. We are so proud to be able to take witness of the student encampments. And we have some students here today that were involved in those encampments, don't we? Michigan State, is Michigan State here? Somebody stand up for Michigan State. University of Michigan, are they here? Huh? Cornell, is Cornell here? No? Cornell is here, stand up. We are so proud. The student demonstrations, the sit-ins, the petitions, the resolutions by labor unions are having a huge impact. And we say today, comrades, keep the pressure on. In fact, turn it up. The only thing that this ruling class understands is mass public pressure. It's all about power and the relationships of power. It's about mass working class movements that only real change can be achieved. That's how we're going to restore abortion rights and win back affirmative action. That's how we're going to end racist police violence. Comrades, we are fighting for the right to organize. We are fighting for the right to housing, health care, and a sustainable environment. And we are fighting this Pride Month for the right to love who we want to love. And we say it loud from this platform, loud and proud, that we are fighting for the right to live in a new society, a socialist society where workers can rule and people can be and breathe free. And we're not going to apologize for it. Comrades, a Trump victory would threaten all of these rights. That's what January the 6th was all about. Never forget the Confederate flags, the nooses, the bear spray, the hidden ammunition, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the neo-Nazis and Ku Kluxers. But more than that, never forget the men in blue pinstripe suits and their attempt to stay in power no matter what. Never forget Trump standing in front of the White House, claiming the election was stolen. And by who? By Philadelphia, by Pittsburgh, by Detroit, by Atlanta, by Phoenix, by Tucson and Milwaukee. In other words, by black folk and Latinos. In one breath, Trump criminalized two entire peoples, just like he criminalized the Central Park Five. This, comrades, is the raw racism at the very heart of MAGA. Immigrants are a special target. First, they tried the wall, didn't they? Then the Muslim ban. Now they are planning concentration camps. That's right. We said it. Concentration camps. Think holding centers as large as Amazon warehouses. Think thousands of red state cops and the military, the militias, kicking down our doors, rounding up our children. And if they come for immigrants in the morning, they're damn sure coming for us at noon. Trump already said it. Think mass firings. Think public lynchings. Think public trials for the act of thinking. You think it can't happen here? Think again. It already did. It was called McCarthyism. Ask B. Lumpkin about it. Where's B? Huh? Ask B about it. Look, comrades, in the first 180 days of a Trump administration, they plan to dismantle programs like food stamps and Section 8. They're going after marriage rights, labor rights, civil rights. And get this, they plan to bypass Congress, ignore the courts, and fire tens of thousands in order to make this happen. And I'll tell you this, when that occurs, these will be the first steps down the road to a dictatorship. Hell yeah, there's a fascist danger, and it is clear and it is present, and once you go down that path, there may be no turning back. That's why we say everything has to be done now in order to prevent it. Now, we're not saying that fascism will come to this country the day after Trump is elected. It will be the struggle over the implementation of their plans that will determine the shape of things to come. What will happen when Trump fires 50,000 civil servants or locks the door to the Department of Housing? What will happen when teachers rise up and refuse to stop teaching Black history or Latino history or feminist studies? How will students respond when debt cancellation is rescinded? What about the gay community when marriage equality is overturned? What will the working class do when they go after Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid? And what will Trump do when the people rise up and say no? Will he invoke the Insurrection Act? Call out the National Guard? Will he do like he did that day in D.C. when he took the military police and cleared Lafayette Square in order to hold up that Bible? Y'all remember that? Huh? Will Trump yoke the press, suspend the Constitution? Honestly, we do not know. But what we do know is that we don't want to find out. Fascism in this country, comrades, would mean a dictatorship. It would mean rule by the banks, big oil, military corporations. Democracy as we know it, with all of its limitations, would be eliminated. This would be a government of a new type. Not a difference in degree, as folks sometimes say, but a difference in kind. It would mean the substitution of one form of bourgeois rule for another. Now, you know, some have argued in our pre-convention discussion that we already live under fascism. You've heard that, right? They say, Rosanna, Joe, what about the support for the genocide? What about the mass arrest of students? What about the police occupation of our neighborhoods? Ain't that fascist? And you know what? They got a point. They do. At the same time, mass arrest, genocide, repression, even terror are not unique to fascism. Capitalism has employed them widely throughout its history. Remember Marx's words. He said, capital comes into the world, quote, dripping from head to foot, from every pore with blood and dirt, end of quote. The much vaunted bourgeois democratic revolution, y'all, was a bucket of blood. The price the world paid for the limited democracy in the West was colonialism, slavery, rape and mass murder in the South and East. And we know that workers, people of color, and women in the West paid dearly for it too. That price, however, did not make these countries fascist, even though they employed bourgeois, barbaric methods. What we call fascism today is a dictatorship of a particular section of the ruling class over all other sections and over society in general. When there is no space for struggle, when the opposition is outlawed, when you have martial law and are forced to live in exile, like our comrades from Iran here today are forced to live in exile, like our comrades from Chile used to be forced to live in exile, like our comrades from South Africa were forced to live in exile, then and only then can we talk about fascism's arrival on these shores. So, respectfully, comrades, we do not agree that the definition of fascism needs to be expanded. We do agree that it needs to be deepened and updated. Let us, in the course of our convention and after it, engage in that conversation and come up with a common definition of the enemy that we are fighting. For now, there is room within which to struggle. Let us use that space to defeat U.S. imperialism. Let us use that space to address the enormous problems we have here at home: the stagnant wages, the homelessness, the poisoned environment, the epidemic of police violence, the mass shootings, the opioid crisis, the epidemic of domestic violence against women. And yeah, this is going to be a long and difficult fight. The good news, the very good news is that the struggle has already begun. Workers are starting to take the fight to the bosses. Strikes are up. Concessions are down. Unions are putting new muscle into organizing drives. The AFL-CIO has declared its independence from MAGA and promised to defeat them up and down the ballot. Then a few weeks later, they declared their independence from Biden's Israel policy and demanded a ceasefire. Add to that last summer's victories scored by the Teamsters, the healthcare workers, the actors and writers, the UAW in its historic stand up, I almost said sit down strike against the Big Three. Stand up strike against the Big Three. We salute today the ALU in their first victory against Amazon. Congratulations, comrades. And we heard the other day from Justine that the Amazon, the ALU, is going into the Teamsters, and we wish you all the best in your new walk down that road. We also applaud the Starbucks Workers United, who forced Starbucks to the bargaining table. Congratulations, comrades. Comrades, while celebrating these developments, we also recognize that labor has many challenges. Only 10% of the workforce is unionized. Labor is divided, with several important unions outside of the AFL-CIO. Clearly, the current level of unity does not correspond to the challenges labor faces from the bosses. In these circumstances, our party needs to put forward a bold vision. Bill Foster, who now enjoys great popularity in the party, and deservedly so, had such a vision. Foster called for industrial unionism and demanded unemployment compensation and Social Security. These concepts were powerful, they were timely, and they laid the basis for building the CIO. What will be our vision today? What brand of unionism will unite workers against occupations, across occupations? And what will be its demands? Because we have a multiracial, multinational, and multi-gender working class, this vision, we say, must address the inherent inequalities within the class. Some people call that identity politics. We call it Marxism-Leninism. For example, undocumented workers comprise 4% of the workforce, but have no voting rights. Prisoners comprise 1% of the workforce. Okay, Bobby, maybe a little bit less than 1%. We've been arguing about the percentage. 55% of them are people of color. Most can't vote either. Women make up over 50% of the workforce, but their essential work in the home remains uncompensated. Shouldn't our vision include voting rights for the undocumented, voting rights for prisoners? Shouldn't it include wages and health care for housework? When applied to party building, Foster's concept of industrial concentration led us to adopt something we called, when applied to party building, Foster's concept of industrial unionism led us to adopt a policy called industrial concentration. Industrial concentration meant building the party in key industries and in working class communities. When some of those industries collapsed or were downsized in the 1970s and 80s, that policy disappeared from our vocabulary and practice. The working class, as we well know, while changing, has not disappeared. Shouldn't our vision resurrect and reimagine this policy as applied to today's circumstances? If so, what industries and what communities should our attention be drawn? This convention should go on record to repledge itself to a policy of industrial or working class concentration. Comrades, what we are trying to say is that the most important thing that we can do is rebuild the party in the working class and in the trade union movement. Everything hinges on that. A strong party among workers will shift the center of gravity in the class. Hell, it'll shift the center of gravity in the entire country. And so the question then is, what is to be done and how to do it? That's the historic question our movement has posed over and over again since time of Lenin. And the answer can be summed up in one word: organize. Yes, organize. Now is the time for organizing, but not just any old kind of organizing, but organizing as communists, organizing with the plus. We are fighting for the right to a job, a quality education, control over our bodies, the right to vote, the right to live free of police murder. Capitalism, as we know, constantly overturns and undermines these rights. That's the nature of the system, and the whole point of our party is to point out, to reveal over and over again the true nature of the struggle. It is that and that alone that builds socialist consciousness, and that is what is going to lead to working class power and socialism. The role of the party is to fight for working class leadership in that fight. Comrades, over the last several months, that has meant pushing for ceasefire resolutions in trade unions. It's meant circulating the ceasefire letter amongst thousands of workers. It's meant urging workers to support the student encampments. Today, it means centering our coalition work in housing, in environmental justice, political repression, health care, around involving the trade unions. We seek their endorsements. We involve them in planning. We solicit their advice and promote their leadership. You know, it is hard to overstate this. Do you know that the trade union movement in this country is one of the few places that provides the framework for real political independence from the two main political parties? It's true. They have their own financing, their own mailing lists, their own phone banks, their own get-out-the-vote efforts. They have their own endorsement process. If you want to establish a new political party based on labor, and according to the last time I looked, in our program we do, don't it make sense to begin with the union's electoral campaigns? Don't you got to start building relationships somewhere? It's simply a matter of calling them up and volunteering. You know, the upcoming election provides a unique opportunity. You want abortion rights, you want trans rights, voting rights, you want to cancel the student debt, protect Social Security, you want a Green New Deal, you want to pass the PRO Act, you want to move the money. You got to participate in the election. Some people call this lesser evilism, and we hear that. We do. But we call it fighting for space. We call it choosing the battlefield on which we fight. And we know that it's going to take a fight no matter who gets elected. The issue is what fights and with who, and where do you have the greatest chance of winning? Again, this whole struggle is about power and relationships of power. It is about leverage and choosing how and when to fight. You gotta be in it to win it. Ain't that what we say? Huh? And you got to go door to door in the neighborhoods. You got to canvass. You got to listen to what people are saying. And you got to organize them on the basis of that canvassing and listening. You've got to develop working class electoral platforms and field working class candidates. And you gotta run for office yourself. We have got to run for office ourselves. We have to run communist candidates. I bet some communist candidates are in this room today. Am I wrong? We got communist. This convention has to begin to think about who are we going to run for office. We got to stop talking about it and start doing it. Are y'all with me? Comrades, we we organize before the election, and we vote in the election. And we do it like workers and communists do it. We do it as a conscious act of collective action. It's about how we act as a class. It's about an expression of working class and people's power. That's why the Vote Uncommitted campaign was so powerful. It was a collective act of people's power, and it rocked the Democratic Party's world. They still haven't gotten over it. And yes, we have to do more than vote. When you vote, you block, right? And you affirm. That's great. It's a beginning. Balance has shifted, but ain't nothing changed yet. After blocking, you have to build. Right? Aaron, ain't that what you said? You go back to organizing around the issues. You take that election campaign platform that you develop and you fight like hell for it. And you use every tool in the toolbox in that fight. You lobby, you demonstrate, you petition, you occupy, you strike over and over and over again. That is the iron law of class and democratic struggle. And that is how we have to fight for working class leadership in this moment, comrades. You know, folks, the fight for working class leadership in this country is changing. It is. You know, there are many new things. The working class has changed in many ways. It is more multiracial. Ruling class has changed too. It too is more diverse. It's not your great-grandmother and great-grandfather's ruling class. It's not. What's new is that important sections of the working class have moved to the left, isn't it? What's also true is that big sections of capital have moved far to the right. These circumstances, y'all, have produced new ideas and demands. You take the freedom movement's call for a third reconstruction. Third reconstruction. Now that is one powerful idea. Think about it for a minute. The first reconstruction resulted in state power to the former slaves, right? A state power that they fought for. A general strike of the slaves. It expropriated property in human form, bonded labor, without compensation. It instituted what they called abolition democracy. What then, on the heels of a mass movement, could a third reconstruction accomplish? What would that look like in terms of new forms of democracy? What would that look like in terms of a redistribution of resources and wealth? Would the banks be nationalized? Huh? That's what I'm talking about. Military corporations? Pharmaceuticals? The point here is that these new circumstances have created new ideas, a third reconstruction, which raise new questions that our party has to help answer. At the same time, These new circumstances give rise to old ideas that are repackaged and served up as new. You take the idea of settler colonialism. You know, we feel that it is important not only to acknowledge, but to do something about the ongoing impacts of how this country was settled, of how it was colonized, the genocide, the racial and national oppression. Like all forms of racism, this is not a thing of the past. It continues into the present. The whole struggle around the Dakota pipeline is an example of that. These impacts must be addressed, and they must be addressed frontally, without hesitation. At the same time, there are variations of this concept that have appeared in the pre-convention discussion that hold that the main contradiction in this country is no longer class between the working class and the ruling class, but between the colonized and the colonizers. You know, Henry Winston wrote a whole book on this issue, polemicizing against this very concept 40 years ago. This concept argues that sections of the working class have been bought off, that they constitute a labor aristocracy. This new version says that white workers have more in common with the bosses than workers of color. They divide the class by race and call these workers settlers. Now, we know how the country was settled, don't we? We know that because some of us were unsettled and shipped over here by the tens of millions during the Middle Passage. We know and understand the history of colonialism, and we are painfully aware of the genocide against the indigenous population. We know that because some of us are their descendants. And we know that a huge debt still has to be repaid to the victims of genocide and slavery. And that repayment must include upholding Native people's demand for land back, restoration of sovereignty, compensation for the violations of that sovereignty, upholding treaty rights, harm reduction, and shared responsibility. We mean at a minimum. That's where you start. That's not where you end. But we also know, comrades, siblings, that in order for that to happen, we got to be united. And we know that this unity is possible because as workers, we face a common system of exploitation, don't we? And we know that in that system of exploitation, there is more that unites us than divides us. Our working class lives and struggles in an evolving, multinational, multiracial, multi-gender capitalist state. The national question, racism, gender oppression cuts straight across it, straight through it, underlies it in almost every aspect that you can imagine. Uniting the class by fighting against these oppressions, we say, is central to addressing the nation's problems. Central. In fact, the reality is that you can't solve the nation's problems without addressing these issues. It's at the very heart of the systems of exploitation in this country. Huh? On the one side, there are the ruling class forces of white supremacy and MAGA pulling the country apart, isn't it? On the other side, there are the working class forces of democracy attempting to pull the country together. Comrades, this is an objective process that emerges from the very heart of the process of production. You know that Lenin argued that under imperialism, there are two tendencies on the national question. One, trend towards separation. The other towards unity. Of the two, he said, the trend towards unity is primary. These are the ideological foundations of our policy. We've got to remember that our task is to unite. But we remember that this unity, while it comes about part of an objective process, is not automatic. And that this unity can only be brought about if there's justice. And that justice has to be fought for. And by justice, we mean fighting to defeat racism and sexism now in the present. Not in some distant future, but now in the present. We remember what Martin said. He said, why we can't wait. We're not ready to wait. The good news is that is exactly what is happening. Justice is being fought for. The African American freedom movement, comrades, led by workers and women in their overwhelming majority, is in the thick of the fight not only against the MAGA right, but for peace and justice generally. Let us recall that it was the African American ministry in this country who were among the first to challenge the White House on Gaza. They were. Let us recall the 60th anniversary March on Washington. We were there. It brought together a wide coalition to recommit to civil rights and justice and to defeat the MAGA right. Let's also remember that the NAACP just yesterday demanded that the Biden administration cut military aid to Israel. They said, y'all, they said it's one thing to call for a ceasefire, it's quite another thing to do something about it. You want our vote? Do something about it. Comrades, let's recall that the movements of the Latino peoples, who are now the single largest racially and nationally oppressed group in the country, remains an indispensable force for progress. As a growing force in labor and in the nation's politics, They are a key force for democracy and against Trump. Bilingual rights, immigrant rights, voting rights, right to culture, speak their language, equal rights are among their chief demands. With the Republican Party threatening to invade Mexico, and that's an even bigger danger now that their sister got elected president. I mean it is. The militarization of the border and peace are among its top priorities. Let us also recall this afternoon that the women's movements for equality and against misogyny, patriarchy, domestic violence, and for abortion rights are also decisive forces in U.S. politics today, second to none. Women have been a mainstay against the Trump right and have led the largest protest in U.S. history against Trump. Since the Dobbs decision, women have led the fight against the GOP right in election after election. They are a leading force in democratic, working class, and progressive movements generally. Comrades, the main task, in my view at least, of this convention is to continue to fight to immerse the party in these unfolding struggles. That's how we're going to rebuild our ranks, party building, recruitment, and the consolidation of that recruitment is on the order of the day. We have to train a whole new layer of party activists from top to bottom. Top to bottom. Alvaro, are you listening? Alvaro's always making the point. Joe, we got to do this from top to bottom. You're right. Cadre development has to be a priority. Yes, we have to up our political and organizational game. Here we need to understand the politics of organization so that we are better able to organize our politics. And that means deepening our understanding of collectivity. You know, the party is based on collectives. Membership is realized in and through them. Collectives are the vehicles through which we organize our politics. It's where ideas and plans are tested in real life. It's where theory becomes practice. And for that to happen, our cadre must fully understand and practice democratic centralism. It's what allows us to speak and act as one. Remember what we said. We said collectivity is our superpower. Gil Scott-Heron said ain't no such thing as a Superman, but we still claim collectivity as our superpower. But in order for that superpower to work, people have to be convinced. Comrades have to understand the why of things. Therefore, cadre development must also provide a clear understanding of the ideas behind what we do. At the same time, while we're doing all of this, we must fight to strengthen the party organizationally at all levels. And we are taking important steps to do just that. Clubs and districts are reaching out to and vetting new members on a regular basis. We were at the New York District Convention. Ani told us, for example, that the district's membership collective regularly processes 30 to 60 members a month. The New York Party has gone from 3 clubs at the time of the last convention to 11 clubs today. Congratulations, comrades. In Southern California, we've gone from, 2 or 3 to 9 clubs now. Now, I'm about to get in trouble for this. Do you know that Laura told us from Michigan that in 2019, at the time of the last convention, their state convention consisted of 10 people sitting around a table deciding who would come. This time, they had a day-and-a-half convention and now sport 4 new clubs, 2 more if you count the YCL. Congratulations, Michigan. Detroit. Today, we have over 100 clubs and counting that meet regularly. We say 100 and counting because new clubs are in the process of being added. Saja from Colorado said one was added in northern Colorado a few weeks ago. And Laura reports a new club was brought on board in Grand Rapids, Michigan last week. Welcome to the party, comrades. And I think we got 2 or 3 new clubs in Connecticut. Joel's going to be mad at me if I don't say that. Welcome to the party. The bigger the party, the better the party, the badder the party, the more we are able to do. And of course, we know that so much more needs to be done. We are painfully aware of that. The party, comrades, is growing much more rapidly than we have been able to organize it. During the pre-convention period, we received a number of good ideas on how to move forward that we need to think through how to implement. We also need more bodies to the task. And you need to know, you have a right to know, that we have added both to our volunteer and full-time staff. The good news is that we have a number of wonderful volunteers. Eric Brooks from Indiana, volunteers full-time. Thank you, Eric. Leads our African American Commission. Scott Hiley from upstate New York, volunteers full-time. Of course, he's taking care of 2 new twins now, so we'll see how that goes. We have Daniel from Maine, volunteer, full-time. Thank you, Daniel. We have a team at Good Morning Revolution. Taryn produces it along with Kay, and Tim helps out and Suze. Thank you, comrades. We have others, I don't know how they do it, but they work full-time, and it seems like they're doing double time for the party. Ani in New York does that. Dante in D.C. does that. Thank you, Ani. Thank you, Dante. And then Ben in New York, you know, organizing the cultural workers. Thank you, Ben. And on top of all of that, we have 2 wonderful full-time volunteers who've been doing it for decades, Joelle Fishman and Roberta Wood. And even that hasn't been enough. And we felt like because of our growth, we have to add to our full-time paid staff as well. And so we have brought on board, in the recent period, 4 additional new comrades. In labor education, Cameron Harrison from Detroit. We expect big things. In education, Eric with a K. We got so many Erics, you got to identify them with the consonants. Fred in social media. We you know, y'all been criticizing. We said the criticism got too hot. We had to do something about it. And in our youth and student work, we've added Aaron Boo from D.C. Welcome, comrades, to our full-time staff. And yes, this is going to be and put a big strain on our finances. But we felt we had to do it. We had to do it. And now we've got to produce and raise the money to make it sustainable. And we know that even with these additions, it won't be enough. Our organizational work has to be expanded even further. It must be, we've been focusing on membership. It has to be expanded to oversee policy implementation, coordination of national campaigns. And in this regard, electing a national organizational secretary, as we proposed in the pre-convention period, is key to making that happen. However, even a stronger national collective is likely to prove inadequate to the task. Inadequate. The strength of the party, as Joel likes to remind us, is not in the national office, but in the clubs and districts. At this stage in the rebuilding process of the party, some are aging out, and many new comrades are coming in. The key issue is finding people who will convene and anchor the work. Isn't it? Question keeps coming up. Who will chair? Who will take responsibility for organization, finances, education, social media? And the reality is that sometimes it's tough to find comrades that are willing. Me do that? They say. And in this situation, sometimes you got to improvise. You know, you got to improvise. And therefore, we have been forced to look for other solutions. And we're happy to say that we're starting to find them. In Southern California, for example, they put in place an organizing collective of the district committee that met for a few years until 2 comrades, Janice and Richard, stepped forward and were elected co-chairs of the district. Same thing happened in D.C. After a period in which it was about a year, the district exec was coordinated to work without a chair. They too elected 2 co-chairs, Carol and Dante. Carol and Dante. If we're not mistaken, until recently, Michigan was in a similar situation. Now Laura has agreed to chair. Thank you, Laura. But New York, Eastern Pennsylvania, Missouri, other districts face similar challenges as well. And the lesson here is that at this stage of the rebuilding process, we have to do what we can to divide leadership responsibilities, share the work in executive bodies until we get comfortable, we learn the work, and are ready to take on the task. That's kind of where we are at the current moment. Comrades, don't worry, I'm almost done. Another essential part of the rebuilding process is building the communist press. It is our voice. It is our public presence. It is our shaper of ideas. It should be our organizer of mass struggles. And when we speak of the communist press, we're talking about People's World, CPUSA.org, and our social platforms on Instagram, YouTube, X, Facebook, and we hope soon TikTok, unless they sell it, and then we got another problem. I don't know what these people are thinking, but that's a whole other story. Now, People's World is our flagship. Everybody knows that. It is a unique product of our movement. The PW is a daily, 24/7 fighter on the front line. And this year, again, we celebrate its 100th birthday. Happy birthday, People's World. And we are going to party tonight in order to celebrate that birthday. Our staff at the PW does an amazing job. They have managed not only to reestablish, but to maintain one of only 2 English language Marxist dailies on the planet. There are only 2. There's the PW and there's the Morning Star in the UK. And they've done so with great skill. You know, our movement faces a unique challenge with our press. It's unlike any other aspect of our work. They're confronted with how to interpret, translate, engage in the struggle on a daily basis, and they got to do it every day, and they got to do it fresh, and it's got to be interesting, it's got to be exciting. They got to captivate, educate, motivate, and implement the Communist Plus, and they're doing it while the whole world is watching. CJ said it in the pre-convention discussion. Most people hide their mistakes. People's World publishes theirs, you know? Oh, you left this period out. You spelled that wrong. That headline makes no sense at all. What were you thinking, you know? In order to accomplish this, our leadership over the decades have honed a unique approach to our press. We say that the PW is the voice of the party and the labor movement, people's movements. This is a partisan approach. It is a class approach that, if applied in a balanced way, maintains a principled position while opening doors, making it possible for the PW and the party to go places it could never go otherwise. You know? We reach 1 million readers a year, and that's without even really trying all that hard. However, it's not enough to say that our party's approach to the PW is unique. It has to be constantly fine-tuned, adjusted. This is particularly true with respect to its role as the voice of the party. And the truth is, lately, that voice ain't what it needs to be. It's not. And this has given some the impression that the PW is somehow removed from our ranks. It's not. Make no mistake, PW is ours. We ain't gonna let it go. But we gotta do more than just declare that. The party has to write for it. We have to be quoted in it. And our work across the country has to be featured, don't it? I mean, this ain't only the job of the party website. PW has to find a way as well. The party matters. What we do is news. And if we don't cover ourselves, you gotta ask, who will? You know? Who will? However, y'all, there's an even deeper issue at stake here. And it has to do with our self-conception and how we see our role. You know, Gus Hall once said, our press supports the left, but it is not a publication of the left. He said, our press fights for a united front, but it is not a publication of the united front. Gus said, the PW fights for militant trade unionism, but it is not a trade union publication. What's missing from all of these concepts is what? Is the plus, isn't it? What's missing is our unique role and conscious intervention and advocacy for socialism. And that's an adjustment that we need to be very conscious about making and maintaining. But even that ain't enough. The PW, it's got to be more than just the printed word in digital form. It's got to be a multimedia enterprise. It needs video. It needs podcasts and other forms of reader engagement. And we've got to figure out how to use it as an organizing tool. I mean, and that's central to the whole Leninist concept of our press, to use it as an organizing tool. And we also need to think about our audience and who we are writing for and who is being attracted to our ideas. Do you know that most people who come to our websites are young people between the ages of 18 and 30? Particularly those between 18 and 24. 18 and 24. At this stage, most are young white men, you know, and that's been that way for a minute, more than a minute. And we've got to think about how to, I mean, that's okay, but how do you build on that? How do you change it? How do you diversify it? Why don't women come to our websites? What is it about us that, you know, we're not? We have to ask ourselves, with respect to young people, what are the issues that are shaping the thinking and fighting capabilities of today's young generation? I mean, if that's who's coming. All of that brings us directly to the issue of the party's youth policy and the Young Communist League. You know, our last convention pledged to embark on a communist youth project and to work to refound the YCL. And we say today we remain deeply committed to that goal, and we're not going to give up on it. We have learned, You know, it's getting cold up here. I ain't got no hair. And all your heat escapes out of your head. We've learned a lot of things in the course of this process. We learned first that the building of the YCL is essential to the present and future growth of the party. It is. Young people, as Lenin once said famously, still come to socialism in their own way, according to their own unique circumstances and conditions. This still requires its own organizational expression, in our opinion. At the same time, we've learned that this expression needs to be flushed out. We've got to ask the question, what are we trying to build? How is that both similar and different from what the party does? This is a political as well as an organizational and ideological issue. Politically, does the YCL have a specific youth and student focus? You know, we used to say that the role of the YCL was to campaign around a youth and student Bill of Rights. That's what we used to say. Is that still the case? If so, what does that look like? If not, why not? And what should it be replaced with? You know, the slogan of the Young Workers' Liberation League, which is what I joined back in the day, was the right of youth to earn, learn, and live. Earn, learn, and live. And then we added love. We said, earn, learn, live, and love. You know? Yeah? That's what I'm talking about. Organizationally, do we have the same structures, the same collectives and committees, the same conditions of membership? If we do, why do we? If we do, what's the point of having a YCL if it duplicates what the party does? Then there's the ideological issues. We share the same worldview, Marxism, Leninism. The YCL, while independent, operate under the guidance of the party. And the role of party members, we used to say, in the YCL was not only to develop and deepen our youth policy, but also to carry out the party's policy in the youth movement. Presently, comrades, there are calls in the YCL for greater structure. We hear that. And some want a convention. We hear that too. But do we have the cadre to make that happen? What would demonstrate that? Should we not consider way stations on the road to greater structure? For example, organizing a national conference on a burning issue, like Gaza, or the environmental crisis, or the gun crisis, or whatever we think would capture the imagination at any particular moment. We attempted 2 national meetings over the last 2 or 3 years that didn't come to pass. The last one we proposed last summer was a national meeting of communist students. But we didn't have the strength to pull it off. If we had, we would have been in a much better position to respond to the student uprising and the encampments around Gaza. So the question is, can we do it now? Let's see. Or if not, can we organize a national conference on youth work to help deepen our understanding of what's taking place in the youth movement and help build YCL collectives around the country? What about a YCL regional school? We've held 3 national schools. The 4th, Little Red Schoolhouse, is going to be in July, at the end of July. But should we think about regional schools? The point I'm trying to make here is that taking on a couple of these initiatives will give us a better idea about what we're able to do. From our part, we stand ready to assist. And again, with that in mind, we hired a wonderful young organizer, Comrade Aaron, fresh out of Howard University. Congratulations, Aaron, on your graduation. And we're sure that Aaron is going to make a big contribution to this work, but we have to help them do it. Well, comrades, I thought for a couple of weeks about how I should conclude this main report to this convention. And then I had a light bulb moment the other night, and I decided I'm not going to conclude this report. You are. You are. This party has had tremendous experiences over the last 4 years. We have fought police murder. We immediately responded in the George Floyd uprising. We have been on the front lines of the strike movements all across the country. We were very involved in the struggle for abortion rights in a number of states and districts. We have fought for jobs. We have fought for Cuba solidarity and for solidarity with the Venezuelan revolution. We have a lot of stories and experiences and wisdom to share. And that is the purpose of this convention, to collectively come together and share and add to this report, change it when necessary, so that we can set ourselves on the task of continuing the process of building and deepening and turning this party into the fighting force that is going to change the shape of the country. So, comrades, as we said at the last convention, let's get to it. The time now is to do it. Thank you very much for listening.